Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me tonight is Ben Parker. Ben, welcome in, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. So excited to be here. We are loaded. I have already done so much film work, and not on everybody, but a lot. And you've done some, and you've done a bunch more work on a different thing that we'll get to tonight. But we are excited to be here, man. We are loaded.
Yeah, I'm taking great pride in just what we're doing year after year, Ben, of getting more and more nerdy and more obsessive compulsive, let's say, when it comes to the NFL draft. Because our whole shtick for like the last 2 years on the pod was like you're the college football guy, right? So you watch college football. This is me trying to like be people pleasing also and make things easier. Ben, you watch college football. Tell me what the prospects are like just from a viewer of watching college football as a viewer of not college football, and we'll take it easy until January, and then we'll really lock in January, right? And just put on our real draft hats and go. And then it is slowly over the course of the last couple of years diverted into you're doing mocks for the following year before the current year's draft is happening,
Right.
and then you're doing film work in May right after the draft. And
Right.
I know the players' names now at least, like, and not even just the quarterbacks, but like for NFLmocks.com went through the top 3 to 5 players at all the positions as of right now. And we are now starting to shift also into what the teams might need. We're going to get to that and introduce today's topic in just a moment. Um, but yeah, man, this is happening, right? We are full on draft. So this kind of marks in our calendars here right at the end of May. 2027 NFL draft season is upon us, and if you're here on Box Score Network, welcome and enjoy the ride because we are giving you wall to wall, month to month, day to day, year to year coverage of all things NFL draft. We'll start getting you ready for 2027. Over the summer, we'll still have some fun, historic, like backwards thinking things. We'll have some theory related pods at some point as well, just general conversations about the draft as a whole. But tonight marks our true first. We're getting you ready for the 2027 draft. Um, you've heard multiple times where Ben and I have discussed at least quarterbacks who decided to go back. So Arch Manning, Dante Moore, guys like that will be coming up tonight in the show, as well as moving forward. If you watch our shorts on YouTube, Ben has already given you guys prospect snapshots of 6 quarterbacks that are expected to go early in the 2027 NFL draft. So if you haven't taken a look at those yet, you'll hear a little bit of that tonight, I'm sure, for most of those guys, if not all of them. And then you'll be able to catch those on YouTube as well. But if you're here on the Simon and Friends podcast, you know what this is. We're gonna do what we do in terms of getting into the weeds. So let me officially introduce the topic. We'll let Ben kind of talk about what he's gonna do and what his brain is already thinking about, and then we're gonna dive in. So we do all these way too early mock drafts, right? We love looking at them the day after the draft. Ben loves looking at doing his own mocks before the draft even takes place for the draft next year. Um, but there's so much context that goes into a season that impacts what the draft is going to look like come April, right? So for the 2027 draft, we have a whole 2026 college football season, pro NFL football season that's going to change who should go where in the draft. And we're going to do all the film work, we're going to do all the team deep dives, and we're going to figure all that out by April. But if we're going to start some mock drafts now and start throwing some names around and put some team fits together, what's the most concrete way to do that? It's to do a free agency preview in May, 10 months early. So I went through and found, okay, who are the top free agents in the 2027 free agents class? Also, just a good exercise to get my head wrapped around that. I don't normally know who the free agents are until like January, February. And so now I at least have a nice little handle on that. Um, Also looked at the guys coming off of rookie contracts. So anybody that's playing on the 5th year option from the 2022 class right now, or anybody that is extension eligible, extension likely, extension not likely, maybe has their 5th year option picked up or had it denied from the 2023 class. Took a look at those names. When I did the veteran free agents, it was mostly if a guy is like a $5 million player or up. Because that'll be someone that at least takes a
Yeah.
real conversation on if they're worth re-signing for the most part. Um, so I took a look at all the team needs and then just handed it to Ben and said, Ben, This is what the one or two positions that are going to be the biggest needs just based off of those free agency parameters for each team. Match them up. Tell me what's going on. So this is a mock draft, but it's not me and Ben going back and forth. We're kind of working together. I'm telling Ben, this is what X team needs, and he's going to give me Y player that fits in. And we're going to see what it looks like, and then it'll be fun to kind of compare it down the road. And maybe the meanest thing about this is Ben suggested that I put the draft order together just off the dome for fun. And I was like, should we do Super Bowl odds? Should we look at like over under win totals? And I even typed a message that said, or should I make it up? And then I erased it because I was like, that's ridiculous. And in that very moment, Ben said, you should just make it up. And I was like, all right, well, I guess that's what's happening. So if you hate the order or you're mad about where your team's picking, you can actually yell at me about that. I actually will take full ownership of it. So I think that was enough of background information from me. Ben, what do you want to say before we dive in?
Yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll on this. The only thing I will say is this mock that we're doing tonight is need based. All right. It is not best player available. It is
Yep.
need based. That way we could build it off of the free agent work that you did. Right. I didn't want to waste the free agent work that you did. So I made a point to out of 32 teams tonight, 32 picks, 28 of them came strictly off of the first need that you had listed, your preferred need. Four others. One had like the third need listed, and then three other teams had BPA for reasons that we will get into later. But yeah, that's it.
All right, let's dive in. Here's the draft order. I'm going to give everybody a minute to digest the top eight picks. All right. So we've got the Browns at one, Jets at two, Dolphins three, Cardinals four. Those teams are pretty self-explanatory, I think, based on the rosters, based on the coaches, based on the coaching situations. And if you want to quibble with me at any point about like where some of these teams are picking, would love to hear that. Then I've got Titans, Raiders, Giants, and Falcons. Don't worry, I've got the Jets and their three picks all lined up as well. Maybe I'll reveal which pick I think is from where, or maybe I'll keep that as plausible deniability on my part. But I went with Cleveland number one because right now it's the Jets, the Dolphins, the Cardinals, and then one other team is really maybe it's even the Titans. I forget who it is off the top of my head now. Of course, as I'm doing this, I probably should have had to remember that. Um, but the Jets, the Dolphins, the Cardinals, and one other team basically had over unders of like 4.5 and 5.5, and the Browns are at 6.5. And that was the only work I did ahead of time to pick number one, because 9 times out of 10, the team that ends up with the first overall pick is not the team going into the season that's not only expected to get number one overall, but even expected to be like a top three or four pick. Like you look at the Raiders, like I think their over under was 6.5, maybe even 7.5 going into the season. Typically, if you're going to try and predict who's going to have the first overall pick, you should look at the teams that are expected to win somewhere between 6 and 7 games, not 4 to 5, just because of the randomness of the NFL. We can't always predict everything. So the Browns are at 6.5. Obviously, we're like, hey, they remade the offensive line, they kind of rebeefed up the defense. A new coaching staff is in. But I want to remind everybody this team might be starting Deshaun Watson at quarterback in 2027, 2026. That could be a disaster. The offensive line is new. That doesn't mean it's going to be better. And Todd Monken might be a disaster, man. Like, there's nothing truly indicating to us that this is going to go well. In fact, it's more likely the opposite, just in terms of what we've seen from Monken, especially since coming to Cleveland. I know they had a great draft. I know analytically they always look good. I know they can have a top five defense and they have the best defensive player in the game. But that does not make a playoff team, right? So I put the Browns here number one overall. And what I laid out for their team needs are big money free agents, are Deshaun Watson, safety Grant Delpit, and defensive lineman Malik Collins. And then Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver, is kind of the highlight of the 2023 draft class entering free agency. But Cleveland just drafted two wide receivers this year. And then Delpit and Collins are both older players on the defense. So quarterback is obviously the play here for the team number one overall. Deshaun Watson, free agent. Who knows how good Shedeur is going to be? I'm assuming he's not going to be worth skipping the first overall pick on. So, Ben, what did you do with this information? Did you go quarterback and who'd you take?
We did. This is one of the teams that fit the needs list here. Wasn't too hard. We went quarterback. We went Arch Manning. So Arch Manning heading to the Cleveland Browns, number one overall in tonight's mock.
Sorry, Arch. Didn't mean to didn't mean to do that to you, man. I should I have cheated? Should I have been like the Steelers get the number one overall pick? Like Mike McCarthy's a disaster and they win 3 games?
Would have been a lot better show. Yeah.
A lot better for me too, man. All right. Let's move on here. The New York Jets. What we'll do is when we get to this next pick, because I'm sure I know who it's going to be, we'll have that discussion about the players a little bit more. Um, All right, the New York Jets. Let me scroll to them and their team needs. David Onyemata, Kingsley Enagbare, Harrison Phillips are the big money free agents. This team needs a quarterback, obviously. They have Geno Smith in place. I think he's on a 2-year deal. They have multiple picks, took pass catchers in 2026, and has a good offensive line, though Joe Tippmann is extension eligible, as is Will McDonald from that 2023 class. Those are their first and second round picks. They have over 100 million cap space, so I assume both guys can get brought back. And then if I have Bailey and McDonald at the edge, Omar Cooper, Kenyon Sadiq, and Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor as pass catchers, I guess you could look at defensive tackle. But we're talking about their second and third picks at this point. Defensive tackle, linebacker, DB, get younger on the defense, but second overall pick has to be quarterback.
And that's exactly what we did. So they picked Dante Moore out of Oregon, second quarterback chosen, second quarterback in two picks.
All right, talk to me about where you are with Manning versus Dante Moore. Dante Moore obviously was in contention to be the number one overall pick in the 2026 class, elected to go back to school. Many joked that it was to avoid the Jets, but here we are. Could still be right there. But Manning, just ahead of Moore for you right now. Talk to me about those two guys, what you like, what you're looking for as a kind of jockey for first overall pick status.
It for me, it's neck and neck right now. As a matter of fact, I don't even have either guy as a top five lock at the moment. I mean, if I was projecting, I've got them top five, but I feel like both guys still have a good bit of work to do to really show people that they deserve that number one overall pick. I mean, everybody's talking about how deep the class is at quarterback, and it is, but these guys need to put out a good season. There's still reasons that both of them came back to play this year instead of going last year. They've got more to show. I had Dante Moore, slightly ahead of Arch Manning until I went back and watched the film again over the past few weeks. And when I watched it, I just liked Arch's easy throwing motion. I really love the way he just looks so natural at throwing the football. It doesn't even look tall, it looks natural. And as I watched that tape, that was the one thing that just barely notched him ahead of Dante Moore. Again, I feel like both guys have work to do, and I had no problem with anybody that's got Dante Moore over Arch Manning, but that's how I got to that.
All right. There will be plenty of time to go back and forth on those quarterbacks for sure, but let's keep it pushing here. Miami Dolphins sitting here at number three. Big money free agents are Jordan Brooks, Austin Jackson, and Aaron Brewer. Obviously, there's a chance this team is looking at quarterback, so I'll leave that up to you. But if we assume Willis did just enough to stick around based on that 2-year contract, and then I re-sign, let's say Brewer and Brooks, no one from 22 or 2023 draft classes to worry about with Achane extended. I know this team needs a wide receiver, but don't forget about offensive tackle. If the everything didn't fall for Miami to be third overall, right? If they end up being at 7 or 8 and the quarterback run happens too early, but here at 3, they could get a quarterback. They're also in line to get that top receiver. So I think I officially went wide receiver tackle, but I don't know if you wanted to deviate for quarterback for them. What did you end up doing for Miami?
Yeah, I worked off your wide receiver need, and I picked Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State too. By most people's accounts and mine too, he's the best prospect in this draft, and I don't feel personally that it's all that close. And again, there's no such thing as a can't miss because we've seen them miss. But Jeremiah Smith has everything that you want. So I went with that. There's every argument to be made that the quarterback might be the biggest need for the Dolphins come next year, and that their need for a quarterback might be just as big as anybody else's need for a quarterback. But we will see, and we will see how these quarterbacks play. So for now, based off the work that you did and that wide receiver need there, I went Jeremiah Smith. Just real quick on Smith, he's got everything. He's got the speed, he's got the height, he's got the physicality. In 24, he showed that he could work deep and scared defenses to death. I mean, just absolutely scared every defensive coordinator out there to death. In 25, they really would not let him go deep. So Ohio State, they're smart enough to figure that out. So they dropped him into the low stuff, and he showed he could handle that and produce there as well. Just a tremendous player. Again, the physicality is there, the hands are there, the route running is there, and again, it just seems to come so natural. And I, I hesitate to use the word generational on him because I know that gets stamped on guys. But if you're going to look at a generational type of a prospect, it's going to be a Jeremiah Smith. Not only this year's draft, but in any of say the last 2 or 3 years, this really is the guy.
For Miami, had I slotted them at 1 or 2, would you have taken quarterback? Would you have gone with quarterback where it's that questionable need, but it's the loaded class and you're at the tippy top? Or is this it's a total unknown at this point with Willis, wide receiver is so barren, you would have taken Smith either way.
I probably would have gone quarterback if you'd have dropped him into 1 or 2, to be honest.
Hmm.
And that gets down to a numbers thing for me. I've talked about this before. So often, not every year, but so often QB3 is a step down from QB1 and 2.
Yep.
That's not always true, but man, that holds up more often than not. So getting one of those top two quarterbacks in a rich QB draft tends to pay off better than collecting QB3. So I probably would have switched it, yes.
And then this isn't a question I've heard about Jeremiah Smith yet. I'm sure it'll come up once the season has started, if not just before. We obviously were very high on Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep.
when he came out. Um, what is, and this isn't an Ohio State thing, right? Even though great track record, a lot of great players. I mean, we just had the Offensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl MVP. But is there a little bit of thinking about how what we thought about Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out that should creep into play for Jeremiah Smith, or is Smith to you even at this point on another level than Harrison was?
I would let it creep in myself. Now, most people won't. All right. And that's because most people are men that talk about this, and men don't ever like to admit that they were maybe wrong at some previous point, right? Okay. Listen, most of the people that were in love with Marvin Harrison and said he's a can't miss are also saying the same thing about Smith. Yes, absolutely. You should be thinking about that. All right. This guy could just get a bunch of money at the NFL level and then be satisfied. I don't think that's the case, but you never know.
Hmm.
And we've seen it too. Harrison didn't land with the greatest franchise, right? Does that have anything to do with how he's turned out? Maybe. We don't know, right? We
Yeah.
didn't get to see him somewhere else. So yes, absolutely. Now listen, people are going to start saying, "Oh no, Smith's more physical," and he probably is, and Smith can jump higher, and he probably can, and they'll list. But listen, there were so few people saying that Harrison wasn't going to make it. There were a
Hmm.
few, but it was so few. Everybody, and for every bit of physical attribute that Jeremiah Smith has that maybe Marvin Harrison was a little notch back on, the one thing you could always point to was, oh, look at his dad. His dad was a route runner and
Yeah.
an NFL supreme. So why shouldn't his son, who's showing everything like that in college, why shouldn't he turn out the same way at the NFL level? So yeah, I get that the physical attributes are not the same, but he had the NFL lineage and that mindset, and you just assumed, boy, he's going to be the same pristine worker. It hasn't
Hmm.
yet panned out. So no, I think you're 100% right. If you're going to pick up Jeremiah Smith, you can't just automatically assume he's going to rescue the room or the team. You got to make sure he's part of the plan that you're building, and that gets back to a good franchise.
As I was thinking about this, the only thing that's trying to save me from having that as my like official take, which is good because it's May. There's no reason that that needs to be my take right now. But Smith
Yeah.
is more like, and I'm glad that was the first thing you said as the difference. Smith is more physical. He's more explosive. I remember
Yep.
watching Marvin being like, wow, he's so big and he's so smooth and he's so
Smooth.
savvy. But when you're that big and you're that smooth and you're that savvy and that good of a route runner as he was in college, you don't have to be as physically dominant. So if he never had to do that, then he gets to the NFL and he can't be as smooth, as savvy. He's not as big compared to everybody else. But Smith is a ball of explosion, right? Plus he's gigantic. Plus he's technical. So like I do think that's where that other level is. But I'm just sitting here listening to people talk about Smith and being like, we had the same conversation with Mark. We had that great quarterback class, and we were saying, no, Marvin Harrison belongs right up there with him. Unless you have a huge need at quarterback, you take this player. Um, all right, cool. We'll save that as a little nugget in the back of our minds as we do our work. Let's get to the Arizona Cardinals. God, how many people have we already ticked off tonight? This is great. All right, the Cardinals probably just need a quarterback straight up, right? And the free agency supports that. Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew are both free agents, but if you want to explore other things, the other big veteran free agents are edge rushers Zaven Collins and Baron Browning. Um, Offensive line as well. Hajalte Froholt is a free agent. They're starting center after this season. And then off the 2023 class, BJ Ojolari is a free agent, as is Paris Johnson and Michael Wilson and Garrett Wilson, the defensive back. Um, I don't even think I sent you all those in the notes because the Cardinals were the first team I wrote down. And I was just like, yeah, they need a quarterback. So, what did you end up picking for them? Did you go quarterback, and who'd you take?
So I went quarterback, but this is the
Yep.
point at which, and this is admittedly, I went out and made a big reach here. Okay. But once you get past the top two QBs, all heck breaks loose. I mean, everybody's got a different opinion on who QB3 is and
Hmm.
4 and 5 and so on down the list. And matter of fact, some people even like some of, the other guys so much they got them ahead of a Moore or ahead of an Arch Manning. So that's bound to happen. So I admittedly went out on the limb here for a guy, but the name is Darian Mensah. I did match the need here. Darian Mensah,
You do
quarterback of
love
Miami.
Mensa. You do love
Yeah,
Mensa.
I do. And I will say this, man. I said this on our show last night that we did. I am wide open to having my mind changed. All right. We've got all summer to just do foundation work on these guys. And then we got a whole season to see what they really are at the next time we see them. And then we've got the draft evals to go through, right? So I'm wide open on this. But at the moment, Mensa looked good at Tulane. Then he goes to Duke, steps up, and he looks really good there. And now he's going to be at Miami, and Miami has shown that they can take these guys and work them, and he's going to have plenty of talent to work with. So I expect him to have a huge year. He's got a good, solid NFL arm strength. It's not elite anywhere near that, but plenty of arm strength to work with. He's got the size. He's got mobility, plenty of ability to get in and out of pocket trouble. He does not have the ability to kill you with his feet, so don't look for large run production. The accuracy, I feel like, is largely there. It's not pristine, but the accuracy is there, and the decision making, the defense reading is solid. It is not, you know, elite level, but it's all solid. So all the makings are there. Now we get to see him at Miami and against a little bit tougher schedule. What I would really love to see, though, is as they go through some of the tougher games toward the end of the year. So they've got a game against Notre Dame during the season. Notre Dame's got one heck of a defense, going to be loaded with NFL prospects this year. So I want to see how he handles that. And then if they get to go through a playoff run, how does he handle it when he's starting to go up against Georgia or when he's starting to go up against some of the other top schools that'll be in those playoffs at Oregon, whatever? Can he still hold up and look like the guy that can handle that? So, but so far there's a lot to like there. I really do like it, and I get it. There's people that don't like him, don't have him anywhere near this high. That's fine, But you're gonna have that same argument with anybody after the top two guys.
All right, let's get to the Tennessee Titans. Not a lot happening for the Titans. Tony Pollard is the big veteran free agent, quote unquote. Peter Skoronski is extension eligible, and I assume that's happening. They probably still should go O-line if they can. But wide receiver and running back are even worthy picks at some point. There's enough talent on the defense right now. I think you got to make sure Cam Ward has what he needs. So, is there an offensive lineman or a pass catcher? I know it's not a high first round pick running back class, at least as of right now, unless you're going to blow my mind away or something. But I know you're not going to do that with me in the building when we're talking this early. But is there an offensive lineman or a pass catcher you really like here for Tennessee at 5, or did you do something else?
No, I did something else, and give me 1 second. I'm rolling over there.
Woohoo.
This is, and I think I did a miscount here, but this is one of the teams I actually went best player available on. So
Okay.
instead of O line, wide receiver, running back, and of course I wasn't going to do running back. I actually went with best player available here. So I'm sorry for the miscount, but um, let me really quickly say there's good offensive linemen. And a matter of fact, I've got one that I've got my heart set on, but he hasn't yet truly stepped up and shown it. So I need to see it this year. We'll get to him later. There are wide receivers, man. There's a couple of wide receivers that I would love to plug in here. But there was another player here that I felt like the Titans could use, and I went with edge rusher, and I went with Dylan Stewart out of South Carolina. This guy's got the goods, okay? And again, sack production is low, okay? It's not mammoth sack production, but he's got everything else. You talk about the freak athlete, he'll be on the freak athletes list, right? Talk
Mhm.
about the size, talk about the arm length, talk about the speed. You talk about the ability to just flat out get to the quarterback and stress that pocket. It's such a huge need at every level of football, man, from NFL all the way down to 10-year-old flag. It is such a huge need. The ability to condense that time that QB's got. So that's where I went here for the Titans, and I know it's not one of your top needs here, but I just felt like the player was too good to pass on.
Yeah, and listen, they did a lot of work on the defense this free agency, like I said, but they didn't get an ace, right? The the Jets, for example, they did a lot of work to rework that defense. But like Will McDonald is, I think, a slight step above the number one. I mean, they have Jeffrey Simmons, the Titans do, but not in terms of a true pass rusher, right? Um, and the Jets got David Bailey. So if they're hoping David Bailey plus Will McDonald, those are probably both those guys are probably they're hoping to be better in 2026 than any edge rusher on the Titans, right? So the Titans got all that foundational work on defense, but they need a number one guy. If they can get a Dylan Stewart, and that's going to be a double-digit sack guy eventually, I think that makes sense. All right, let's go to the Raiders here. Um, scrolling. I wrote these in a weird order, so forgive me. Big money free agents for the Raiders are Malcolm Kuntz and Jeremy Chin. Trey Tucker is probably the biggest 2023 class member to consider re-signing, but I think this has to be wide receiver regardless, even if you bring him back. Unless Max Crosby does get traded at some point, then you can look edge. With if it's Crosby and Kuntz potentially out the building. But what did you do here for the Raiders at 6?
So yeah, I went wide receiver here, man, just like you asked for. And there's a good one sitting here. Matter of fact, so good I was tempted to hand him to the Titans, but I really felt like the Titans needed that edge rusher, so that's why I didn't go here. But there's a guy named Cam Coleman out of Texas, played for Auburn the past season, and didn't quite get to meet what everybody kind of thought his full potential was down there at Auburn. So he's getting to play with Arch Manning this year. Texas has not one but two good wide receivers to work with this year. Cam Coleman appears to be the better one. There's a lot of people who feel like if it weren't for Jeremiah Smith being this generational can't miss type of a guy, that Cam Coleman is just a shade or two behind him. Like it's not as big of a
Hmm.
difference as people might would expect. And I'm largely in that same boat. You know, I watched him a year ago and his size, his athleticism, his speed, his hands, it all jumped off the board. It's fantastic. I love Cam Coleman. Now, I will say, had some drops last year. There is just a little bit of sloppiness to his game, just the smallest bit of maybe, I hate to call it a lack of discipline, but just the smallest bit of lack of discipline in his game that makes you hesitate. But there's so much there to love and to like. I mean, this guy just has it in spades. The Raiders are going to be thrilled to get him. And it just doesn't look like this guy would ever be a dud. Maybe he never lives up to that high ceiling, but this guy looks like he could still produce even if he's never just that amazing guy. But I think he's got a real good chance to be the amazing guy. Matches the need here. Really like it here for the Raiders.
Yeah, and if by all accounts, it seems like going to Texas with Manning and Sarkisian like is like the thing that's gonna unlock him, right? Like really pin everything down that needs to get pinned down to unlock that.
Yep.
Hopefully the Raiders will be the type of organization that can also help that with Mendoza and with Kubiak, but TBD, we will see. All right, next up, number 7, the New York Giants. John Runyon, Greg Newsome, Evan Neal, and Devin Singletary are the biggest free agents. Kayvon Thibodeau is on his 5th-year option in 2026. So technically the last year of his deal as well, but extension eligible this summer. Micah McFadden, the linebacker, also part of that 2022 class, but he re-upped on a 1 year deal for this year, but that's a starting linebacker. And then the 2023 class has center John Michael Schmitz up for an extension. Not sure he's going to get that. And things have been questionable. I went a year out on this one. Malik Neighbors with that knee injury, like nothing is making me feel great, at least about like the reporting around how that recovery is going. So I even threw wide receiver in here a little bit for you. Um, but between Runyon and Schmitz and then Neal as kind of that swing backup guard, interior offensive line was one for me. And then I did go wide receiver as a secondary option. But if you feel we need to go another way as well, let me know. But what'd you do here for New York?
Okay, so for me, this one still falls into the need category that you listed, but I did tweak it and twist it just a little bit. All right, so apologies for that. I went offensive line, but I went with tackle, and I
Fine.
figured we could bump somebody over if we had to. But you know,
Illuminor and Maui Noah are having this battle for who's right guard and right tackle, and then secretly they're all just like, "Hey guys, you're both playing guard in 2027, so don't worry about it."
yeah, basically. All right. So here's the name. I know you know the name. The audience probably can anticipate it. It's Jordan Seaton, offensive tackle from LSU, played at Colorado last year. This guy just jumped off the film to me last year. He wasn't NFL ready last year, and I don't know if you don't know if he, I don't, he may not have been eligible either, but everything jumped off the film, man. The size, the speed. I mean, the feet, the long arms. I mean, there's nothing not to love here. He's just gotta, he's got to keep fine tuning that game and get the technique down. But man, I mean, it looks great to me. I'm not yet saying it's Joe Alt type stuff, but this is to me a legit franchise cornerstone of a tackle here. And I just think this guy is a tremendous tackle here in the making. I think they're going to be happy to have him. I think any team would be happy to have Seaton. There's a chance that that he doesn't quite show that pristine work and he just floats around in the first round somewhere. There's also a chance that he looks insane at LSU and he goes up to the top prospect besides Jeremiah Smith. That's
Hmm.
he's got that about him. Aside from injury, I don't see how this guy slips out of the first round. These tackles are so needed by the NFL, and he seems like he's got the goods, even if he doesn't have a pristine season. I'd be shocked if he falls out of the first round. But that's Jordan Seaton coming out of LSU.
Yeah, that's a guy I'm really pumped up to watch, and I think that makes sense for the Giants. I won't even bug you about which side he's going to play on. I already did enough with the Maui Noah and Illuminor having to move over to guard. We'll ignore the rest of that for now. I'll give everybody a month before I start making them worry about that. Let's hit the Atlanta Falcons here, round out the top eight. Jesse Bates and Kyle Pitts are the big money free agents. But Jawan Taylor and Ryan Newsel, who are below that 5 million mark, they're going to be free agents starting offensive linemen this year, and they're going to be 30 years old in the last year of their deals. And then starting left guard, Matthew Bergeron, is in the last year of his rookie contract. So there's a lot changing there. New offense, new offensive coordinator, offensive head coach, new offensive line coach. So a lot changing with the offensive line this year for them. And the team needs building blocks. So O line, but quarterback, depending on how you think this year is going to go. Tua is playing on a small contract, obviously. Penix, they're hoping well, I don't know if they're hoping. I guess you should hope that he at least comes back from the injury and is healthy. What they want to do long term at quarterback is up in the air. So I left this for you. Quarterback, offensive line is what I was looking at for Atlanta, though. What did you do for them at 8?
Yeah, I went quarterback here. So we took CJ Carr out of Notre Dame is the guy that we went with. Again, a lot of people like Carr. Not everybody likes Carr. So, here, quick description on him. Uh, Plenty of NFL arm strength. It does not appear to me, and again, he didn't get as many chances to throw last year because Notre Dame ran the football so much. In my head, it was 57% of the time. It was I don't remember that, something up high up there. But he looks like he's got plenty of NFL arm strength to work with. It's just not elite. It's good, solid arm strength. Maybe right with Darian Mitza, probably in the middle of the top guys. The accuracy looks to me to be very good. I think he's again not pristine accuracy, but very good accuracy generally speaking. He's got plenty of mobility. He can sure get out of the pocket. I think he can pick up first downs probably at the NFL level. I do not feel like he can torch you for big plays with his feet, but the mobility feels like it's there. To me, the best part of his game, and man, out of all the quarterbacks I've seen in this year's group, he looks like the guy who's the best at reading defenses and making decisions. And again, that's saying a lot, but based on what I saw last year, this guy looks like, to me, he's head and shoulders above at reading the defenses and making the decisions. Now, the SoCal tape from last year, you could see that he did struggle once they got some heat on him. So, is that something that will consistently be a problem, or is that something he'll clean up? We'll find out. But CJ Carr is who we went with here.
And this is funny because, just 2 years ago in the 2024 class, we had the surprise Michael Penix go at 8 to the Falcons, to give us that fourth quarterback in the top 8. So if
Yep.
Atlanta were to do this, we're repeating a little bit, which is certainly interesting. All right, so there's our top 8, and I get all that, and yeah, the hype around the player is definitely growing. He was the one that nobody was really talking about during this year's process, but as soon as the season ended, um,
Right.
he was QB3 on a lot of the mocks, or QB4, or just a name that was getting brought up that I didn't recognize all of a sudden, right?
Yep.
So that's definitely interesting. I can see that. So, anyways, here's the top 8, and just for numbers' sake, 8 picks, obviously, 4 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, 1 edge, 1 offensive lineman. If we went back 2, 3 weeks ago to the pod we did of our takeaways and our historical trends, we didn't narrow it down to top 8, but it feels like we're on track with a lot of that stuff, especially with what we know about quarterback. But only 1 edge in the top 8. And that was a big conversation we had. Edge rushers actually aren't going in the top 5, top 10 as frequently as we would think. And then offensive line, do you have a lot of top talent, or are guys just getting pushed into the back half of the first round? We'll see how that continues the rest of the way here. But then, yeah, the 2 receivers and the 4 quarterbacks. All right, so that is our top 8. Manning, Moore, Smith, Mensa, Stewart, Coleman, Seaton, Carr. Go to those corresponding 8 teams.